All right, Be'ez Hashem, there is a very, very interesting Rambam, where the Rambam says there are many Isurim that are Negea to Shabbos, which have a connection to Mekach or Memcha, business activities. Now, a person may think, when do I do business on Shabbos? What's Negea? So it's actually not true, and it happens to be very, very Negea this. Let me give you a few examples of what we mean, and then we'll try to get through the Halacha L'Maaseh. There are many people that have websites, and those websites could be open on Shabbos, selling things on Shabbos. Obviously, we're discussing selling things to Goyim. Selling things to Eden is not Negea, but selling things to Goyim. Does a person have an obligation, number one, to close the website? Is there a problem with my website being open on Shabbos? Question number one. Question number two. I took a babysitter on Shabbos afternoon to babysit the kids. Right? So the babysitter charges per hour or whatever they do. Is that a problem or is that not a problem? I made a kiddush and I hired a caterer in order to, cater the kiddush. Now again, the kiddush is on Shabbos morning. Is that a problem? If you have a bank, we'll get to questions. I will ask my questions first. If you have a bank, and which I'm assuming most people do, have a bank account, and most bank accounts pay interest, right? It might not be very high, but it's definitely over a shava pruta. And the question is, are you allowed to gain the interest? Meaning, are you allowed to actually use the interest that they give you? I'm assuming most of you know this, Shaila, because most of you have a bank that gains interest, and one of those days is Shabbos. Other examples. You are a balkoira, and you get paid for lining on Shabbos Kodesh. Or for example, you give a share on Friday night, or daf yomi share, whatever it may be, and they pay you for that in one of those days of Shabbos. The list can go on and on. Camps in the summer, the list can go on. We've got many, many, many things to cover over here. But the basic idea is, are you allowed to work on Shabbos? That's the basic idea. And somebody once complained this to me. He said, I don't understand. I would like to open my business on Shabbos, but I'm not allowed. A caterer, he has no problem opening his business, and he can work on Shabbos. Why can't I work on Shabbos? What essentially is the difference? And so if I make a business covered Shabbos, maybe that will be mutter, probably not, right? So we have to understand exactly what are the hetem, if there are hetem, and how to deal with it, because these are very, very negea shailas. I would tempt to say that most people do not know this shaila either exists, or they think it's not such a problem. I'll just give you the babysitter one. I've spoken about this in the past, and the babysitter shaila has always been like, what? Or the bank one, for example, when I make interest, and every month, every day they give me interest on one of those days of Shabbos, are you allowed to gain interest? That's another example, right? Which I'm assuming most people do, right? You have a bank? You know what comes in on Shabbos and you get rid of it? You have a heta?
I don't have an interest account.
Oh, you don't have an interest account. Okay, but there are people in the world, you know people that do, right? You know people that have interest accounts. So, right, what about stocks? Very good. What about, I don't know if they use it anymore, eBay. People use eBay nowadays? Yeah. Right? So they do? No. Oh, they do, yeah? Whatever. So, apparently you can win it on Shabbos. You can win it, and people call it winning. I won, right? I don't know what it's called, winning. You bought something. You bid something, so you won the bid. Okay, so what happens if the bid falls on Shabbos? I think apparently you can, like it's set sometimes, right? It's set up, you can set up on Shabbos, or it's set up on Shabbos. Are you allowed to? Let's say you have a can machine. By Goyim, not even discussing Eden. I own can machines. All over Manhattan, I put my can machines. No, am I allowed to gain, what's the heta? What's the heta for all of these things? As you have a car rental company, or an Airbnb, and you're renting out your Airbnb apartment, and there are Goyim, again, we're not discussing Eden, we're discussing Goyim, who are taking your Airbnb, or they're taking your car, whatever it may be, and they're paying you. What's the Yissa? Okay, so everybody, we've gone through some of the shilas. Before we take your shilas, One second. Let's get to the basis of what we're discussing. I didn't even get to what we're discussing. One second. Let's get to what we're discussing. We didn't even get to the sugi yet. Yes.
You've got a website. There's also Jews in other countries
who are doing it when it's not Shabbos for them. Same shaila, but let's talk about the bulk of it if it's for goyim. Now, the Rambam says that there is an issa of doing business on Shabbos. What's the issa of doing business on Shabbos? What's the problem?
It's a weekday activity. You might build a raft.
Weekday activity. That's an interesting one. Rashi actually says like that in Ksubas, that it's a mimsa chevtzecha, which means it's not chevtzei shamayim, it's your chafatzim, it's your items, and that's considered to be a weekday activity. That's Rashi in Ksubas. The Rambam learns, and this is the Rambam in many situations, the Rambam says the issa is a zigzeira otu ksiva. Now the Rambam is famous for this. He writes this in many places for many things, that sometimes there's a gzeira that if you do something, we're worried that you may come to write. When is that the case? By something that you normally write in. Right? So one example would be business. Another example could be a game. There are games that people play, and by playing the game, you have to write things down. That might be included in that, and that also would be Gzeira Shema Yichtov. But the Rambam says over here clearly that the Issa we're dealing with over here is an Issa of Shema Yichtov. It's a Gzeira D'Rabbanan. It's an Issa D'Rabbanan, because you may come to write on Shabbos, because it's a very normal thing for a person to write when he does business. Okay? Now, what is the makar for everything we've been discussing? What is the makar for the shaylas that we've been discussing? So there's a Gemara in Bab Metzion and Ches, where the Gemara says like this. The Gemara says if you want to hire a worker, or an animal for that matter, to watch your field, or to watch your stuff, whatever it may be, says the Gemara, there's a big nafkamina how you hire him. If you hire him, we're not going to get into all the details at this moment. If you hire him for the day, then you cannot give him a noisnin loy Sechar Shabbos. That's the Lashon HaGemara, as I pass in the Sechar Shabbos Siv Dalet, that a noisnin Sechar Shabbos means don't give him Sechar Shabbos. Okay, we'll talk about the giving, is that the Issa or not? But I'll upon him, the idea over here is the Gemara tells us that there's an Issa of Sechar Shabbos. That's the Issa we're dealing with. The Issa of Sechar Shabbos. What does it mean, Sechar Shabbos? To make money for Shabbos. That's it. To make money for Shabbos. Now again, we're going to have to clarify all of the shilas that we brought in. Are those Nogeya? Are they not Nogeya? And what is the main heta that we're going to have to be dealing with? Be'ezah Hashem Yisborach. Now, the main Geder of the Issa. What is the Geder of the Issa? The Geder is receiving money for work that was done, or for renting things as well. Even if you yourself didn't perform any work, but you rented something, so your item kind of did work, then it's so say. There's a Reb Chaim Brisk brings a stencil in the Gracha and stencil Omid Zayin. He wants to taina, when he brings down this Rambam, that the Geder of this Malacha over here, very interesting, is not profiting on Shabbos, he tainas. It's not the Issa of Be'etzem profiting on Shabbos. Rather, he says, it's doing a Malacha, even a Malacha Muteres, that's mutter to do. For example, a waitering job, you're allowed to waiter on Shabbos, there's no Malacha that you're doing. However, since you're receiving money for that, that's why it's problematic. So that's how the Reb Chaim Brisk says the Geder of this Malacha is. But the whole question is like this. Who is the Issa on? Is the Issa to pay the money, or is the Issa to receive the money? My nafkamina. Hello?
To pay if you're allowed to.
My nafkamina. Say one word. No. Again, is the Issa to pay? Is that the Issa, which is the Lashon HaGemara and Shulchan Aruch Shimbav Siv Dalet ein noisnin loy? Or is the Issa to receive the money? What's the Issa, Rabbi Yisai? And my nafkamina. My nafkamina. One word.
If you can work or not.
My nafkamina goy.
If it's a goy.
If the you said that?
Why did you say that?
You said that, goy? When? I didn't hear. You should have said it a bit louder. So the question is like this. If it's a goy, if the Issa is what? To give. And to be honest, even with a goy, by the way. If the Issa is to give, then the Issa is the goy. If the Issa is to receive, then I can pay the goy, I just can't receive it from the goy. Right? Now, we pass in the Maisa like this. Even though it's interesting, the Gemara says, Ein noisnin loy. It's Mavor from a Gemara in Shabbos, Be'etzem a Mishnah, and Shabbos Kuf Chav Aleph Omid Aleph. And Zoi pass in the Mishnah Berurah Halacha L'Maisa, that the Issa is to receive the money. Now, if the Issa is to receive the money, again, make this very clear. The Issa of Sechar Shabbos is to receive the money. What does that mean? A, I cannot receive money for any work that I did, or for any of my things that, like my Airbnb apartment, or my car, or something similar to that, I cannot receive money. B, I have another problem. To pay a goy might be okay. I'm allowed to pay a goy. Again, obviously if he's doing something that's mutter, obviously Amir L'Akim, whatever, not going into Skivis, Kablonis, we're not going into that. But I'm allowed to pay a goy. But what about paying a Yid, Rabbi Yisai? What about paying a Yid? If the Issa is to receive, am I allowed to pay a Yid? Huh? Oh, Lifnei Yiva. Which comes out to mean that, for example, if you have a babysitter, right? Somebody called me up one time, he had twins, and he said he had a night nurse, and the night nurse came on Shabbos. One of these Jewish Haimish Eden that come to your house, I'll sleep there for a few days, and look after the baby. So the question is, he asked me, am I allowed to pay them? So I said, Al Sechar Shabbos, It's not a problem. Why? Because the issa is to receive, and you're just giving. But there's an issa of lifnei yiva, and it's a Yiddish woman, and therefore since it's a Yiddish woman, it's going to be asa. Okay, that's the issa that we're dealing with over here. That's the issa. So therefore, either there's an issa to receive, or there's an issa to give. By the case of a yid, because of lifnei yiva. Are you with me? You got all this? Very, very important. There's two little simonim in Shulchan, two little se'ifim in Shulchan Aruch, and it has ramifications your entire lifetime.
Is there any heta for it?
Of course. Of course. 1 second. Yeah, don't worry. That's why it's called Issa v'heta, not heta v'issa. First you have to know the Issa. Then we'll discuss the hetem. Okay? Somebody once came up to me, and when I gave shiur in Gan Good over there, he came up to me and says, every single time we do the same thing, you start the shiur, Mamish, it's awesome! And then halfway throughout the shiur, then you're like, well, the Maisa, like this, or like that. I said, in Hanami, I tell about the guys that leave halfway. Those guys just get the Issa, they don't get the Heta. Anyway, so, and the guys that come late is even worse, right? Because they think it's completely mutter. But the point is like this, the Issa is to receive the money. Now, Shimon wants to know, is there a Heta? Absolutely. The question is how, and it doesn't always apply. And we're going to have to talk about it very clearly, because these are Isurim that unfortunately many people are over on every single Shabbos. Now, Bidi Yevet, right? Before we get to the Taim, Halacha Lemaisa. Your bank gave you interest, or something similar to that, or your website made money, or the eBay thing worked. Lemaisa, Bidi Yevet. It happened already. So bad. Is it really so bad? So Lemaisa, the Ritva in Avodah Zarah of Aleph and Aleph brings down that it's Asa Bahano, and you have to take the money and throw it into the Yam. You can't get any Hana whatsoever. You can't even give it to a yeshiva to help them steig. No, you're getting Hana from that, that's Asa. Says the Ritva in Avodah Zarah, the only heta you have is to throw it in the Yam. There's absolutely no heta. So that's what he recommends for a person that has a bank that has interest. Okay, so that's number one. The Chassam Sofer in Orach Chaim brings down that the only heta he says is give it to tzedakah. So he says you're allowed to give it to tzedakah. And Rav Moshe also in Tshuva, in Chelik Daled, Orach Chaim Simon Chav Tes, says of course you yourself can't have hana, but you can give it to tzedakah. Now that's...
The interest rate goes up as time goes on. Do you have to take off for the rest of your life?
Let me leave interest in banks. We're going to get to it tomorrow. So today we're just going to get to the Soda Issa and understand it before we get to the Ethereum. You have to understand what's Asa. So number one, Bidi Eved, you for sure can't have Hana. You can either, like the Chassam Sofer and Rav Moshe, give it to tzedakah, or like the Ritva says, it's Asa la'olam, and there is no heta. You should know, by the way, I just quoted you some of the Gedolei Achronim. And the Meister Shulchan Aruch discussed in Simon Reish Mem Hey Sivov that Paskins is Asa to have Hana. The Balatanya and Shulchan Aruch Harab Paskins this way as well. That is Asa to have Hana, which would mean that even the Chassam Sofer and Rav Moshe that say you can give it to tzedakah, they can't make a big plaque with your name on it. Because that's what I'm getting Hana from that. Right? You're getting Hana from that, and that's problematic. But Stam to give it to tzedakah anonymously, we'll take it. We'll take it. Okay? Alright, so let's move on, Rabbi Isai. Now, what if I pay before Shabbos or after Shabbos? What if the money only comes in after Shabbos? Would that be a heta?
No, it's still made.
Oh, says Shimon, what's the shaykhs? Well, give it when you pay. At the end of the day, you're still making money for Shabbos. So it would be problematic in that case. Okay, that's Gavaldik. Very, very good. Move on to a couple of things in that case. By the way, there are Sameach Paskins that it's not only money, any form of payment that you receive for something done on Shabbos is Asa. So for example, if someone comes along and says, I'm not going to give you money, but I'll give you, I'll give you a present, I'll buy you something, whatever it is, as your quote-unquote wages, that is problematic. That's called Sechar Shabbos. Sechar Shabbos doesn't mean only in the form of cash. It can mean any form of payment is going to be Asa, even food. If you do this for me, I will buy you, I'll get you a shawarma. That's Sechar Shabbos. That would be Asa, right? It's very, very negay, this sort of thing, right? For example, you tell kids, if you come on Shabbos and come to say Tehillim, whatever it is, we will give out prizes. That could be a shayla of Sechar Shabbos, right? Again, we'll have to get to the exact Gedorim of how exactly that works, but that could be one of the Yisum. Now, what about, you know what? I want to give it as a present. You did work for me. I want to give you $100 as a present. Does that work? So the answer is, you can't give Sechar Shabbos and call it a present. It doesn't work that way. Right? It's a present. What's the biggest nafkamina? If they can, ribbis it won't because it wasn't lending money. We're talking about services that was offered, the work that was done, that would not be ribbis in that case. It's like the ribbis, which one? Nah. First learn that halachas, then get back to me. So basically you can't give someone money and say, oh, it's a matana, I gave it to you b'toras matana. Horaya, if he could take you to Beis Din. If he could take you to Beis Din for the wages, then avada it's asa. If the pshat is that you never owed him anything, and for the nicest of your heart you're giving him a matana, that's mutter, because I don't owe him anything. I'm being a nice guy, giving him something. But if I'm chayav to give the wages for the babysitter, but I say, you know what? I'll give it to you as a present. Doesn't work, because I might still owe them the money. Okay, so basically there's a lot of shilas that we're going to have to get to. We're going to have to talk about the next stage we're going to get to is the heterim. And after we get to the heterim, we're going to go through every single one of the examples, bli neder, that we mentioned. Go through it and try to see which one will be mutter, which one will be asa. Have a wonderful day and see you tomorrow, Mitzvah Shem.